Welcome to Aerospace from the Ground Up, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes and into the hearts of the humans who bring aerospace to life. I'm your host, Nikki Malcolm, and in each episode, we will uncover the diverse and inspiring roles that make this industry soar. From technicians and supply chain experts to designers and machinists, we highlight the incredible variety of pathways that shape the world of aerospace. Join us as we dive into the journeys, challenges, and triumphs of the extraordinary individuals behind the planes. This is Aerospace from the Ground Up. Welcome to Aerospace from the Ground Up. I'm back and I'm your host, Nikki Malcolm, and today we have an exciting guest joining us. With us today is Hunter Roth at Cutting Edge Metals in McMinnville, Oregon, where he works as a CNC programmer. He has quite an interesting story about how he got into that role, and I can't wait to hear more about it. Welcome to the show, Hunter.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, I was so happy to read your bio and learn more about you, but I think the audience would love to know, what your career journey looked like. I think it sounds really interesting. So give us a preview into what that looked like for you.
Yeah, so after high school, I went into a community college for drafting because I was kind of interested in that. And then during that time, I got an internship at a machine shop doing drafting. So I got to design some prints for them and kind of touch them up for the shop floor. And I kind of got bored of that after the internship ended. They kept me on part-time, so I was doing that for a couple extra months.
Yeah.
And then they let me go into the machine shop because I got kind of bored just sitting in front of a computer. So I started cleaning some parts, deburring some parts, then loading some machines, and I'm like, you know what? I like this. So I changed my my career path at Chemeketa, which was the college I was going to go from drafting to their manufacturing technology program.
So you were mid-program and you changed to CNC because you're like, I want to be hands-on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that something that, did you grow up like that? Have you been a tinkerer, or sometimes people like to say gearhead? Is that part of your journey?
Yeah, a bit of that. My dad
Yeah.
was really into cars. He actually has his own CNC in his machine shop. So like
Okay.
it's weird that I never got into manufacturing through
Yeah.
him because
Yeah.
like he got the machine when I was in high school. I'm like, oh, that's cool, big machine,
Yeah.
whatever. Just kind of went on with my life.
I'm sure your dad's like, dang it, I tried. That's funny. That's a really interesting point, right? Because we hear a lot about the different ways that students find their careers. And it's interesting to hear that your dad was into it and you're like, and you came to it on your own. What were some of the biggest differences for you between the drafting and being in the machining side of things besides just the hands-on part of it?
I didn't get too far along to know where drafting would actually lead because I was still taking the very basic courses. But as far as what I was doing for ARE, which is where I was working at the time, I was basically just modifying customer prints they would get, so that way the prints they had on the shop floor had everything they wanted to be shown in a way that they're more familiar with. So
Was that?
as far
Oh,
as
sorry. Go
what
ahead.
it was pretty boring work, just rearranging prints.
Hmm.
So I'm like, I don't really want to do that.
Was that an aerospace company or machine shop? Just general. What kind of parts did you
General,
make?
they were
Yeah.
ISO certified.
Mm.
They did a lot of work for dental because in that area there's like 3 different dental companies that would sub out work to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, other than that, I don't remember any other specific industries they were involved in.
Hmm. And what matters to you in a career and in a job, in your role?
Good question. I think being challenged enough, but not discouraged by the challenge, because I like to push myself and I like rewarding work. I don't feel like we're doing work that I think is redundant and repetitive. I don't really like sometimes it's nice to just sit in front of a machine and load parts, but after a week of that, you're just like, all right, now what?
Yeah. How can employers, do you think, keep that interest from younger people? You're one of the youngest guests we've had, so I'm really want to dig into what you think. How can employers How can employers keep it interesting and keep it lively for their employees in that regard?
Hmm. Starting at like the base level, I think people who are just running machines and operators, moving them to different machines in the shop instead of just keeping them in one machine or in one cell to get them
Mm-hmm.
experience throughout the shop, I think
Mm-hmm.
would be good just because I enjoy learning at least different machines. It's
Yeah,
surprising what the
absolutely.
difference between one machine and the other is. So,
Yeah, I don't know that either. I had never even thought about that. And just even if it's just like a three axis from one three axis to another, or
hmm
you mean like going from a lathe to a CNC?
both.
Both. Oh,
I
I
mean,
love that.
between verticals, it can be different enough to like learn
Yeah.
new things, especially if it's a different machine maker.
Yeah.
Like if from like a DMG to an Akuma, those are pretty different controls.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what advice would you give to younger students that would be considering a career in aerospace?
As far as aerospace manufacturing,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, try it out. If you can get into a shop working part time, it's I've been surprised with how flexible most the shops I've worked for are with their scheduling.
Hmm.
So
Interesting. Say more. Yeah.
being able to get started somewhere part time, I thought would have been really difficult. But
Hmm.
ARE was, I would say, just a great company to work for. Um, they would let me pick my hours to work best with my school schedule, and even work late or work a swing shift or anything along those lines, and it was, I think,
Really?
really helpful for me.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that. That I think that sentiment would resonate with a lot of young people in this flexibility, and the gig economy really offers that flexibility that can be sometimes hard in manufacturing to do that. So I'm glad they were able to. And what do you well, let me back up because you said aerospace manufacturing. Do you consider yourself to be in aerospace or just in manufacturing?
I am now, so like
Yeah.
I would say I have 6 years of experience in manufacturing, but only 2 of those years have been for shops that do aerospace work. But then
Hmm.
of those 2 years, maybe 6 months is actually directly involved with aerospace parts.
Got it.
So
And
I don't
go
think
ahead.
I'm that knowledgeable about aerospace specifically.
Got it. Is that part of it interest you, or are you more just I want to do the hands-on make things?
I mean, I like programming and making the parts. Being specific to aerospace is just a thing. It's cool to be at like one of those big three, like medical, defense, and aerospace, kind of the big three, and to be
Yeah.
working in two of those at least is
Yeah.
nice for me.
That's cool. I I've always been in aerospace, right? So it's interesting to me to talk to people who are like, yeah, I want to manufacture. And does it intrigue you or pique your interest when you guys are working on a new project that might be for a really cool airplane at all?
Yeah,
Yeah. It's,
yeah. Knowing where parts that I make end up is
yeah.
great, and then if they're going into planes, then people could like possibly see them, like, oh yeah, that's what I do. It
Yeah.
helps because whenever I say I'm a machinist or a programmer, they're like, what? What's a machinist? They get really
What's your,
confused.
how do you answer that question?
I cut metal and make things out of metal.
I like it. It's just straight to the point. What are the you said you went from working in non-aerospace to working in aerospace. What would you say some of the biggest differences were for you in that?
Hmm. I wouldn't say there's a huge difference because the shop that I went from after ARE was an aerospace shop.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think because where I started with ARE was very focused around lean manufacturing, and they were ISO 9001 certified. Yeah. Um, they had like the foundation that most aerospace shops have. So it's
Mm-hmm.
the only thing that really changed is they weren't AS certified and had the parts
Oh, okay.
or the
So you
aerospace
had
parts.
to go through all the quality regs and all of that. So nothing new there.
Yep.
Uh, so what are the most rewarding aspects of working in your role?
I think for me, what's most rewarding is when you get a print in and it's a part that looks like, oh, I don't even know if we can make that, and you go through the process like, oh, I think we could, and then you try it, and then you get a finished part, and you're like, oh, that was I'm surprised I did that.
I
And it's
did
just
that.
yeah.
Do you find, I think that I don't necessarily understand machining to the level that you do, right? But I know
Mhm.
that there's different like methodologies that you can do to make a part better and faster. Is that something that piques your interest or that you really dig into?
Yeah, optimizing things is very
Yeah.
satisfying to me. I was at
Hmm.
a tool and die shop a while ago, and just by changing out one tool, I cut the cycle time in half, and I'm like, wow, I like that. I want to do more of that.
That's awesome. Do you get the ability to do that in your role? Do you have, the ability to recommend or suggest and look at things to optimize?
Yeah, that is essentially my job. We have
Okay.
proven out programs, and I will, if I feel like we need to, try and reduce the cycle time on them. And then most of the new programs that I create, I have cycle time in the back of my head. It's like, oh, if I can do this, that'll be a little quicker. So
Hmm,
I typically lead off with going in a speedier direction.
I like it. So, this is an interesting question for me. I'm curious what yours is. Like, what trends or changes are you seeing in the industry that excite you the most?
Hmm. Um, a lot of cobots. So do you know what cobots are?
Mhm, mhm.
I think it was UR Robots. They released their numbers on how many units they've been selling, and I think other companies got really surprised by that number, like, oh, that's a really lucrative business. So now a bunch of other companies are making cobots, and hopefully the price can drop down and make automation in that style a little more
Yeah.
affordable, which I think would
Yeah.
be really good for the industry.
I agree completely. I get a lot of pushback when I talk about that because it can be hard to program a robot unless you have really highly repetitive work. And unlike automobile industry, we don't have the same production rates as in
Hmm.
aerospace, and so it can make it a little more challenging. But I think that cobots are a really great design for that. How have you seen them used in your work that you're doing at companies, at your company or at others, in a way that you think is really fascinating?
Sadly, no. The
Hmm.
best automation that I've been around has just been large pallet pool systems with basically enough pallets that you don't need to tear down things.
Yeah.
ARE with their lean process, they would use some Jergens products to help load fixtures on and off faster. And
Hmm.
even them, I think there are new things that are being made and designed for 0 point systems that would benefit them. They're
Hmm.
just kind of slow since so much of their shop revolves around those older products.
Yeah. Yeah. It can be interesting to see how those companies and their manufacturing equipment evolves. Can you share a success story from your career or an initiative or a project that had a significant impact on you?
Hmm. Most recently, we had this defense part that came in, and it was probably the coolest looking part that I've made. But one of those things where you get the print, you're like, oh, that's looks really complicated. I don't even know if we can do that with the machines we have. But then going through the process and then getting a very close to good part right off the bat was really satisfying, and only needed some fine tuning after that to get good parts. And then we made 11 of those, and then got the order back a couple months for 45, and felt good to get that.
All right. Yeah. I love that. I love that you're attached to, the your success really pushes the later success in getting more of those businesses. I love that. It sounds like you take a lot of pride in the work that you do.
Hmm.
Yeah. So what about a time you had to face a challenge?
Hmm.
Anything you want to share there?
um, Working with stainless steel in a production environment, we've got a lot of stainless steel parts from the same company, um, and dealing with tool life and having reliability in the machining process was
Mhm.
something I definitely struggled with because
Mhm.
I ended up scrapping a fair bit of material just because the tool would get dull and then start grabbing the part more and then like lift it and shift it in the vise and then it'd be scrap.
Yeah.
So bit of trial and error and struggle with those stainless
Got it.
parts.
Yeah, stainless is rough. Inconel is just as
Hmm.
bad. I sold metal for a long time, so I understand what you're saying. So, how do you stay motivated and inspired in your work?
I am on Instagram a lot, and I follow a lot of other machinists and programmers on
Okay.
Instagram. So being able to see what they do and the things they're working on kind of helps me to push myself,
Oh,
and I get a lot of ideas from those people on Instagram.
do you want to shout
Um,
out any of them that might people might be interested in following?
um, NH Micro, he's a watch maker in Australia, and
Okay.
it's really cool to see a lot of the stuff that he does. Adam the machinist, he's a tool and die maker, just a one-man shop,
Yeah.
and he does a lot with just a Haas mini mill, a grinder, and then a really tiny like phone booth mill machine.
Nice.
Um, but yeah, I think there's a lot of information that people are starting to share a lot on social media platforms.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to
Hmm.
really help people understand what a cool industry it is to be a part of. And I mean, what would you say to a young person that asked you, you know, what your job is like and if you like it?
Hmm. I think saying, that, oh, if you like making things with your hands, that not even with your hands, but just having um, a process you can be involved with and like you are directly tied to the outcome,
Hmm.
I think is really satisfying and
Yeah.
resonates with a lot of people.
Yeah, I agree. I think, we hear a lot. People have a lot to say about young people right now. And I think that's probably always been the case back way a long time ago when I was a young person. People had things to say about me.
Yeah.
What would you want people in our industry to know about your generation and this work?
Mm. I think we're really good at getting information from the internet. Like just lately, we one of our machines it lost a macro program for their tool change, which is little important. So I've been trying to basically rewrite it from scratch using Chat GPT and then everything I can scour from forums on the internet. And I
Hmm.
think I have something that I'm ready to try, which is
Wow.
nerve wracking because I haven't messed with macros on this type of machine before.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I think a lot of us are also very driven to learn, at least the people who are really motivated. I think
Hmm.
with our generation, there are a lot of lackluster people, but the people
It
that
can
are
be.
the people that are
That's true in every
motivated,
generation, by the way.
yeah, the people that are motivated and dedicated to this field, I think,
Yeah.
have a lot to both gain and to give back.
I love that. So, the last question, the one I ask every single podcast guest is, when you were little, what did you want to be when you grew up, and how does that compare to what you do now?
I think the thing that I stuck with from a young age, or maybe middle school, was an aerospace engineer, which is
Hmm.
kind of funny that now I'm working in an aerospace machine shop.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I did in high school. They had this engineering program where there's a space museum, and we get bussed out to do a half day of school in the space museum to have like
Hmm.
all of our STEM and engineering classes. And I did that for a year. I'm like, man, engineering is kind of boring. A lot more paperwork than I wanted.
Yes.
So now I'm
That's
kind of
funny.
like doing some of the engineering processes, but the more hands-off stuff or hands-on stuff instead of
Hands on.
the
Yeah.
paperwork stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I really love that because, that's where the idea for this podcast was born. Was this, I think that a lot of times the perception is that you either have to be an engineer or a pilot to be in aerospace. So I love what you
Mm,
said because, maybe engineering is not for you and you want something more hands on. And there's so many opportunities for people that have an interest in that. And even myself, Hunter, I like that hands-on part, right? So I
mm,
have stuff in my garage that I'm tinkering with, and I regularly think, gosh, should I have pursued something even more machinist wise? Because I also have that same need and desire to do hands-on stuff. So, well, thank you for your time. Is there anything else you would want to say to prospective, like people that are considering or a little bit lost and trying to figure out what they want to do for a career?
Scour YouTube. There's lots of good YouTube videos about machining now, and
Mhm.
some of them are really involved, but some of them aren't so involved. And I think similar to 3D printing, how in a short period of time that really took off and became user friendly for people.
Yeah.
There are a lot of smaller desktop uh, mills that people can get into for a decent price. And I know some people are even trying to make a little 5-axis desktop mill for under 10K.
Really? I'll be
Yeah.
keeping my eye on that. I bought a 3D printer and I disagree that they're user friendly.
Oh.
Or maybe it's just the user because I cannot figure that thing out.
Ah.
And but yeah, no, that's really cool and I love that. And it's amazing how much access to information there is on YouTube and online. So, well, thank you so much, Hunter. I appreciate your time here today.
You're welcome.